Welcome back to another episode of Free the Plant, Free the People. I'm your host, LeVar Eady, and Free the Plant, Free the People is presented by BluRok Farms. Remember, if you have any medical cannabis card needs, go to leafwell.com and put in BluRok Farm 10 and get $10 off getting your card. So let's get into today's exciting episode, which is going to be about actually cannabis and reviews. So you might be wondering, what do I mean by that? We're going to be reviewing a couple of different strands that I was able to purchase here in New Mexico, and we're going to talk about those strands, the history of those strands, and then in our second segment, we're going to talk about a brief history of Cookies the brand, and talk about their recent opening of their store here in New Mexico. So let's begin with first talking about the criteria for which the reviews that I'm going to talk about today were based. Those reviews are going to be based on several different criteria. One of them being potency. Potency is not high on my list of the criteria. It's on the list. Again, it is taken into consideration, but it doesn't hold the weight that it seems to hold in the public forum. What I mean by that is here in New Mexico, we do have if you look at the prices are really based on the potency of that cannabis. It's also taken into account of if it was grown indoors or outdoors. So I do think that should be a factor of indoors or outdoors. But I do think you can create outdoor or greenhouse cannabis that is either equal or can be superior to indoor, and vice versa. The same with indoor compared to greenhouse or outdoor. So I really think it's about the level of the grower as well as the genetics of the strands that should determine the pricing, in my opinion. Potency, I've had cannabis strands that have, let's say, 28% potency that don't have the greatness or the effect as a strain that had maybe 18 or 16%. Because to me, the entourage effect of all the cannabinoids having a relationship together is more important than the potency. But again, potency does have a place in this criteria. It's just not the highest for me. So THC potency, CBD potency, other cannabinoid potencies are important in the determination of the criteria for this evaluation. We're also going to be talking about aromas and flavors. So terpene profiles are very important to me in this regard. And if we were going to rank this list, terpene profiles are at the height of that list because to me, that's really what sets the tone for the effect for me. I go to dispensaries and pick what strains and what cultivars I want based on how it smells. The nose knows. So that's my determination. That's the highest criteria for me in that regard. And to me, strains that have a higher complexity of those terpenes are ranked higher for me. So for my company, for BluRok Farms, 2% terpene profile is our base. And to be honest with you, most of our strains, the real base is about 3. But if you were to look at our SOPs or look at our determination factors for determining if a strain or cultivar makes it to the production line, is based on it has to hit 2% minimum. But most of our strains are in between 3 to 4%. And we're striving to go higher than that. So that's the criteria for us in that regard. The nose knows. So go with the nose. Would be the equivalent to the same thing for wine sommeliers when the smell is a component of their determination or their criteria as well. Another component on that criteria is appearance. Are the trichomes dense? And not only dense as in having bulbous heads with thick stalks, but the density in regards to how many trichomes are on that particular bud. Are they sparse out, spread evenly, or are they very dense, so populated that it's hard to tell the distinction between one trichome versus another? That is important to me as well, because that also helps in giving with the terpene profile. So does the bud look frosty? That's a component to it. Color and structure is also part of that appearance aspect of it. Color is not as important to me. Yes, does it make it look pretty? Does it give a nice optic and aesthetic? Yes, that's great. But when you're, as in regards to effect, it doesn't help or hurt the effect. It doesn't. It has no relationship to how your body internalizes it and the feeling that it has. So you can have a nice dark purple granddaddy perp, let's say, or a light green, like a almost neon green dream cake. One doesn't, because of the color difference, one doesn't make one better than the other. It's just going to be your personal preference on how it looks. But as in effect, it doesn't have an effect. So that's why it doesn't rank high. It's very low in regards to that. But again, people like pretty things, so it does have, it did make the list in that regard. The other thing that I do want to put into appearance is if the bud itself is dense. Is it dense? Is it fluffy? Because for me as a grower, that gives me some indication. Some of it can be genetic factors for, let's say, fluffiness, but other reasons for having fluffy, non-dense buds is high temperatures, low light, the proper improper spectrums. So those are indications for me about the growing conditions. So that's why I take that into account as well of the density or the fluffiness of it. So that's important. And going back to color real quick, you can induce color in plants by putting them in cold conditions. So that's why I say again, it doesn't change the terpene profile or the cannabinoid profile, it just changes the appearance. And that doesn't really have an effect on grinding the bud, smoking the bud, consuming the bud in any regard. The next thing that we take into account is curing and moisture levels. And by that is when you break down the bud, does it just crumble in your hands, which is an indication that it was dried too long, it's too dry, the moisture content isn't balanced. Or if you push on it and you can feel some moisture coming out, that means it wasn't properly cured and dried, that it has too moist, which can induce and create opportunities for mold to be created in the buds, especially if you don't use it quickly enough, or you have it in conditions where you're allowing the environment to proliferate mold in those spaces. So that's important as well. The other aspect into that of if it crumbles or if it's moldy, you should have some rebound. I mentioned this on a previous podcast of when you push on the bud should rebound to a certain degree. That gives you an indication that it was properly cured. If you push on it and it crumbles, too dry. If you push on it and it doesn't rebound, too moist. So you want to have that balance. As Absol said, everything in life is about balance. So that's an indication about curing. The other aspect about having it cured and properly cured is if it's not properly cured, when you roll it into a joint or blunt, it doesn't stay lit. It keeps on going out because of it not being properly cured. It doesn't have the proper moisture, dryness content to allow for that. Also, if it wasn't properly cured, when you light it, you can get these sparks, which means that it wasn't properly flushed or that some of the added nutrients weren't released. Usually, in essence, that means there's some levels of magnesium and zinc, which cause that sparking, as well as or seeds. Those are other things that can be affecting how it's consumed, especially if you've ever smoked a joint or a blunt with a seed in it. It is the nastiest taste that you can imagine, so that adds to your enjoyment or your experience of consuming that product. Other aspects of moisture content is if it is too dry or too wet, especially in the response of dry, as it dries and it loses that moisture, those trichome heads fall off easier, so you're not going to have as much trichome heads which hold the resin, which gives you the cannabinoids of THC, CBD, other effects that you want to experience when you're smoking. The other area that we're going to talk about is, or that we're adding into this criteria, is effects. So does it give you a creative, uplifting, relaxing feel, or does it keep you on the couch? Does it cause you to fall asleep? How long is that duration? Is it an hour? Is it 15 minutes? Is it a couple of hours? Those things are coming in, or is it a balance high where you feel not too heady, but not too body high, where you can still function? And it all depends on what effect you want to go for. And so we'll talk about that as in relationship. So I'm not going to smoke a sativa and be mad at it or give it a low score because it gave me the uplifting effect when I wanted a sleeping effect. That's not how we're going to be rating these. It's going to be based on the criteria that it's supposed to have and then the effect that it gives you as a result of it. Trimming appearance is on the list. I like a well-trimmed, manicured bud. I don't want to have a lot of what I call, or what I was always described as duck feet on the bottom, which is sugar leaves that can be peeled off if you properly trimmed it, or having fan leaves sticking out that don't have any trichomes on there, that I don't want to be smoking or consuming that vegetative leaf that has no trichomes or cannabinoids that are going to add to the effect that I want to experience in my consumption. Um, so those are the other things that I keep in mind with that. In regards to that trim and appearance, is it a large bud? Is it a popcorn nut? That's something I take into account as well. But again, I don't hold it too strongly because I do know that there is a genetic component to some of those. My experience with some of the cookies lines is they tend to be smaller, more dense nugs, with other cultivars or breeders tend to have bigger nuds, but they might not be as dense as, let's say, that cookies line is. And so that's just characteristics of those particular genetics. The last couple of things that are on the criteria are strain reputation. So, and again, it's not high on the list, but it's something that I do want to take into account, and that is something that we keep on the table. And what I mean by strain reputation, so what is the lineage of it? What are the previous strains that it came from? How long has this strain been in circulation? What has it been stabilized? And what I mean by stabilizing is, I brought this up on other podcasts as well, is stabilizing is when you're a breeder, you breed a particular two plants together, you want to get it to eventually to the point that you can reproduce that same product and it be stabilized and the genetics be stabilized enough that you're not going to get a lot of genetic drift with repeated growing. You are going to always get some genetic drift, epigenetic drift, as a result of multiple generations. But if it's a stable genetic, that epigenetic drift and that genetic drift tend to be minimized. So those are some things that we want to keep in mind in regards to strain reputation, genetic lineage, and the last thing that I'll add to that list is packaging and presentation. Now, that's not very important on the effects, on all that, the growing process and everything like that, but it is important because that is how the consumer is getting it. And as we know, presentation is important. If I give you a filet mignon and I present it on the top of a trash can lid, it's not as appetizing as if I give you that same filet mignon on a gold plate. So packaging and appearance does have a factor, but again, is very low on the list, but it's something that does need to be mentioned as well, because that is going to give certain companies competitive advantages versus others. And then the last thing is just the overall experience. What did I leave with after having this whole entire experience? What was my determination? What was my evaluation? So those are going to be the criteria on which are some of the factors that we're going to be using for the criteria for determining these reviews. And we're going to be reviewing two particular strains. The first strain that we're going to be reviewing is Jack Herrera. So let's talk about Jack Herrera, its origins and things of that nature. Jack Herrera was named after the author and activist Jack Herrera, and it was believed to be originated in the Netherlands in the 1990s. And it was named after Jack Herrera because of how prominent of a cannabis activist that he was. And he wrote he's the author of an influential book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, which was advocating for the legalization of cannabis. So, as I mentioned earlier about the lineage, that lineage is what I think helped maintain or give this strain its staying power. Because of the legacy of Jack Herrera and the things that he did for advocating for cannabis use, as well as the other distinct qualities that we're going to get into next. So in regards to the genetic makeup of Jack Herrera, it is believed that it was made up of three different strains in particular, one of them being haze. A lot of people know about hazes, silver haze, lemon haze, to name a few of the hazes. And hazes tend to be known as strong sativas, known for their uplifting and energetic effects. So that's where Jack Herrera got some of its more sativa dominant, which it is a sativa dominant strain, characteristics and qualities. Northern Lights number 5, which is, again, a lot of people on the East Coast probably know about Northern Lights, as well as some people in the Bay Area. And I would imagine worldwide know, but that was a big strain that was very popular, especially in the East Coast. So Northern Lights number 5 was a specific phenotype, phenotype of Northern Lights, and it was one that they picked because it had its potent indica qualities. So Hayes gave Jack Herrera its more sativa uplifting energetic effects. Northern Lights gave it some potent indica effects, which would be the counterbalance to those uplifting and energetic effects. And then Shiva Skunk gave it its hybrid, which is a combination of both indica and sativa, which more, my determination is it balanced it out. Balanced it out so that it's not too strong of a sativa, which in some cases, for some people, really, really strong sativa can give you a jittery, anxious, paranoid feeling. So I think they were trying to counteract that extreme feeling with the Northern Lights number 5 to kind of bring it down, and then the Shiva Skunk came in to balance it all out to give it a nice strong sativa effect, but in a more balanced measure. So those were the genetic makeups for Jack Herrera, and that's what gave it its sativa more dominant effect, which is why I really, really enjoy it. As I stated before, I'm a sativa guy, sativa all the way, but I appreciate hybrids and indicas respectively as well. So now we want to talk about the distinct aroma and flavor of Jack Herrera. To me, Jack Herrera, one of the reasons why I love it so much is it does have a very distinct taste and smell. I can pretty much and pretty consistently smell and taste a Jack Herrera cross because that's how distinct it is. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But the aroma and flavor is very complex. It's really hard to put a name on it. It's not like, let's say, with certain Girl Scout cookies, you can say, oh, it has that sugar cookies kind of taste, where they got the name from. Or like modified grapes, where you can taste a grape component to it. Jack Herrera has so complex of a terpene profile that it's really hard to just pinpoint and name and say it smells like this or tastes like this. But to describe it, I say it has a sweet, spicy, earthy aroma, but it also has hints of pine and citrus. So that's why it's so complex. It's really hard to kind of put a finger on it. But for me, once you smell it, you can always identify it. Now let's talk about the effects. Jack Herrera has a well-balanced effect, but it has an uplifting, euphoric feeling for me. By that means I feel uplifted, energetic, but I don't feel jittery. I don't feel anxious. I don't feel like, oh, I got to do something. It's just like, okay, I'm here, I'm awake, I'm ready. I can do whatever I need to. It also has a creative and focusing high for me. So I use it in the morning to start my day off. Like I mentioned before, XJ13, Jelly Bean have the same kind of effects for me. So I use those in the morning to set my day, and I'm very productive and efficient and creative and find creative solutions for problems that I have during the day to achieve the goals that I wanted and that I set out in the beginning. So that's why I really enjoy this strain. So that's one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about today in regards to that particular strain. So Enchanted Botanicals, as I mentioned, Enchanted Botanicals is where I received the Jack Herrera that I got here in New Mexico. I don't see them having it as of late, but it was really a true Jack Herrera from my experience. And so they had a really good product. This is not an avocation or a promotion for Enchanted Botanicals. I'm just stating where I got it from. And I'm not condoning or condemning them. I'm just saying that's where I got that Jack Herrera. I thought it was really well done. Out of the Jack Herreras that I've experienced, is the best one that I've experienced here in New Mexico. I don't remember the producer, so I apologize about that. But Enchanted Botanicals was the retail that had it. Now, currently, Jack Herrera has, currently Enchanted Botanicals has a sativa, Durban Poison, that has some characteristics, smell-wise, terpene profile-wise, that is similar to Jack Herrera. So if you're looking for something similar, that's what I would recommend based off that. Again, this is not promotion or avocation for them, but if you want to experience that or get a similar kind of profile or taste, that's what I would recommend. Again, it's not quite as well done as I believe the Jack Herrera was, in my estimation. The second strain that we're going to get to is Cookies Cereal Milk. Cookies is the brand, Cereal Milk is the strain. And so let's get into cereal milk's origin and genetic makeup. So, from my understanding, well, one, cereal milk is touted and promoted as a hybrid. It does have a hybrid feel from my experience with it, but the genetics behind it is Y Life, which is a cookies staple, which is cookies and cherry pie cross, and snowman. So that's the genetic makeup for cereal milk. So on one side you have cookies and cherry pie. Cherry pie is really the staple for cookies. Most of their genetics started with cherry pie. Girl Scout cookies. My understanding is cherry pie is the mother or the lineage for Girl Scout cookies. So cherry pie is one of their staples, and a lot of their genetics has some form of cherry pie in it. Cookies is another spin-off of cherry pie, and they combined cherry pie and cookies, got that, and that gave you Y Life. And then they combined Y Life and Snowman, and that gives you cereal milk. Cereal milk is known, it got its name because it has a fruity kind of cereal milk, like as if you were smelling cereal like Fruity Pebbles, Lucky Charms, sweet cereals. After you ate all the cereal and the milk is left and you got that sweet milk at the end, that's the smell and the terpene profile that it represents. And to me, it does smell like that. It is very, very dense in its in the trichomes. It is very dense. It has a dark color to it. It's a dark purple, very dark purple, with some hints of black and very, very dark purples. The hairs tend to be an orange, a darker orange, and they are very dense buds. I've never seen them with very big buds. Because I believe, from my experience with cookies and their lineages, they tend to be very dense, smaller buds, and that's just a staple of, at least in my experience. And every cereal milk that I've experienced from true cereal milk, from the cookies themselves, has been smaller, dense buds, not crazy small like popcorn buds, but smaller than you might see with a Gorilla Glue #4, which can tend to have bigger buds. Like I said, the flavor profile is like cereal milk or sweet milk after the cereal has been eaten, or a hint of ice cream, kind of creamy nose to it. Now, the effects for cereal milk tend to be a more balanced, as it states, a hybrid. So it's not going to leave you in the couch. It's not going to leave you too uplifted and energetic. It's going to keep you nice and mellow. So I really think that it's a nice midday, evening kind of smoke. I wouldn't smoke it late evening. I would use a more traditional indica for that, and I wouldn't smoke it real early in the morning if you were looking for an uplifting kind of feel. So I would leave it more in the middle, like a midday, right after you get home from work, kind of smoke that will kind of mellow you out and leave you there. I want to talk about some of the, again, this is anecdotal history. My first experience with cereal milk was in 2017, 2018 at a sesh in Oakland. For those out there that don't know what sessions are meetings of like-minded individuals that love, care, want to promote, have businesses in cannabis, where we would meet, sell products, exchange information, exchange knowledge about products, and go from there. So that's what a sesh is, without getting into the more legal components of it. But I had my first cereal milk in 2017, 2018 in Oakland at a sesh. I won't name the sesh because I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but if you guys know, you know. But those sessions, a very good dude, again, I won't give his information out. He came to me and he was like, yeah, we got this new thing in, it's cereal milk. And the origin that he stated to me, and that was, again, anecdotal kind of rumors in the scene, were Cookies was developing a strain specifically for Wiz Khalifa, outside of the Khalifa Kush that he already has, but another strain that they wanted to kind of appeal to his sensibilities. And that's what came out was cereal milk because it had a sweet taste, but it wasn't going to leave him in the couch. It was something that he could smoke, like I said, midday, during the day, and still be productive with all the things that he has going on. And he really enjoyed it. So that's what I wanted to kind of bring into account in regards to cookie cereal milk. And I've experienced that, like I said, 2017, 2018, several times in the Bay Area, as well as recently here with Cookies opened up their dispensary here in New Mexico, specifically Albuquerque. So let's get into briefly some information about the Cookies brand. A lot of you might know that Cookies is a brand that was started by entrepreneur Burner, who is a rapper um, based in San Jose, in the Bay Area, and he really developed this brand and made it as one of the most popular and known brands here in New Mexico or here in the world. It's the most popular brand, and the reason why I believe it is as popular as it is because of the quality that they produce. The cereal milks that I had in California taste like the cereal milk that I had here in New Mexico. Um, they're consistent, the high quality, and that quality of grow was garnered by Burner's partnership with Jigga. That's his name or his industry name. He's a grower and a breeder. Jai Chang is the actual developer, and he's created multiple cherry pie or Girl Scout cookies, cereal milk. I believe he was a part of the Gary Payton brand that they've or strain that they've created. We'll get into more of cookies at another time, but I just want to give you that kind of history of how it garnered. And then we will have a follow-up podcast that's going to go into more of the intricacies of cookies here in New Mexico and what that means and how that can have impact on the industry as a whole here in New Mexico. But I did want to talk about briefly some of the reasons why I think the cookies brand here in New Mexico has some standing out features. One of them is, again, the popularity of the brand. The brand is already established for its quality and consistency, as well as its unique strains. So that helps it stand out. The Cookies Blue is very notable. When you walk into the store, it has a nice calming vibe. It feels like you're in a high-end designer store. And it just happens to be designer cannabis. So that I think has a lot of appeals, and I believe the strength of the brand is can potentially help it overcome New Mexico's local mentality. My experience here in New Mexico is, and again, it's not a bad thing, but it can be a bad thing if you're not open to other people's experiences. And so my experience here is. And I don't want to generalize and say everybody, but my experience is that some people here in New Mexico are, if you're not local, we don't mess with you. If you're not local, it's we don't vibe with you. And me coming from California, where it's very dense in the culture, there's so many different cultures. We're open to everything. So if you can add something, I'm open to hearing it. And that feels, at least in my experience, it hasn't been as opening. And so I wanted to see if Cookies has the ability to overcome that local disparity that other brands here in New Mexico have experienced, and other people that are from out of the state have experienced as they're trying to make it in this space. So we'll get into that a little bit more on the next episode. But so those are the things that I wanted to kind of bring in today, talking about those two strands as well as the Cookies opening here in New Mexico. So again, let me know your opinion on what you think about Jack Herrera. What's your experience with it? Dispensaries where you might have found something similar or like it and that I should visit. Tell us other dispensaries we should review their products and their strands. Other products we should review. So again, thank you for listening to another episode of Free the Plant, Free the People. I'm your host, LeVar Eady, and this episode was presented by BluRok Farms. And again, if you have any medical cannabis card needs, visit leafwell.com and enter the code BluRockFarm10 to get $10 off. So please leave like, share, and follow us, BluRok Farms, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything, BluRockFarms.com as well. So again, have a great day and free the plant and smoke some great herb.